In 2007, the name Tuan Kit Lee, also known as Dickie, became a horrifying nightmare in Massachusetts, USA, when he broke into a woman's room, restrained her, and assaulted her. Not only that, but what was remarkable was that despite wearing a mask, the victim recognized him due to his foul breath, reeking like a garbage pit. This detail earned him the chilling nickname, the Bad Breath Rapist. Nevertheless, the police, FBI, multiple manhunt programs, and even America's Most Wanted had to get involved in a pursuit that lasted nearly 2 decades. How did he manage to do it? The chase for the foul-breathed predator would become a tense and breathless battle of wits. Don't take your eyes off the screen. This video will uncover one of the most shocking cases in US history. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next mysterious stories. Our main character, Tuan Kit Lee, born on April 2, 1971, grew up in a Chinese immigrant family settled in Boston, Massachusetts. His family had a business tradition running a small restaurant in the area. Since childhood, Lee exhibited bizarre behaviors. He had a perverse fascination with watching women, an obsession with controlling others, and displayed suspicious behavior toward female classmates. As an adult, he didn't pursue a respectable career, but instead indulged in gambling, drinking, and living off temporary jobs. By his 30s, he had become more aggressive, committing acts of harassment against women in Boston and surrounding areas. The police investigated some cases, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. Perhaps this made him more confident and reckless. He believed he would escape punishment as he had before. But this time, he was wrong. On February 2, 2005, in a small alley in Quincy, Massachusetts, inside his family's restaurant, a horrifying incident occurred. That night, after the restaurant had closed and everyone had left, one person remained, a young female employee, 22 years old, working at the restaurant. She was a kind girl, new to the city, without many friends. This made her the perfect prey in the eyes of a predator lurking in the shadows. In the silent night, Tuan Kit Lee quietly entered the back area of the restaurant. Using a spare key, he unlocked the employee's room, because this was his family's restaurant. He then sneaked into her bedroom, approached her with a knife. As the victim was deep in sleep, he suddenly pounced on her, restraining her. "Stay silent, or I'll kill you right here." Panicked, the girl tried to resist, but he was too strong. He tied her to the bed, wrapping duct tape tightly around her wrists against the metal frame, ignoring her desperate struggles. With his victim subdued, the beast within him awakened. As part of a premeditated plan, he carried out the assault on her. 30 minutes later, he vanished into the darkness, leaving the victim immobilized on the bed. Her mouth was gagged, preventing her from screaming, and her limbs were bound tightly. All she could do was lie there, waiting for help. The next day, February 3, 2005, when she didn't answer her phone for hours, her boyfriend began to worry. He rushed to the restaurant, knocked on her door, but got no response. Sensing something was wrong, he forced the door open, and the scene before him left him frozen in shock. His girlfriend was tied to the bed, covered in bruises, too terrified to speak. He rushed to untie her and immediately called the police. Less than 10 minutes later, investigators arrived at the scene, took the girl for medical examination, and officially launched the investigation. The police collected evidence from the room. They found ropes, duct tape, and dried blood on the bedsheet. More importantly, they discovered fingerprints on the doorknob, footprints on the floor, and short male hairs. Although rescued, the victim was still mentally unstable. Despite that, she tried her best to provide a full testimony. But one particular detail caught the investigators' attention. The perpetrator wore a mask that concealed his face, yet she still recognized him. Not by his voice, not by his build, but by the overwhelming stench of his breath, the unique, horrifying odor that struck fear into her. It reminded her of someone who had worked at the restaurant before, Tuan Kit Lee. An emergency search warrant was issued. The police raided Lee's residence, but he was gone. Inside his room, they found a black leather mask, ropes, and suspicious items. Additionally, forensic experts confirmed that DNA evidence found at the scene was a perfect match for Tuan-Kit Lee. The information was released to the public. Massachusetts police officially issued a warrant for Lee's arrest on charges of sexual assault and unlawful detention. Public outrage erupted. The media relentlessly covered the case. Local television stations broadcast every detail of the crime. On social media forums, one particular detail from the victim's statement haunted everyone. "He had a horrible breath." The victim's words were quoted everywhere. Investigative journalists followed this lead, searching for people who had interacted with Lee. Many confirmed that he always had severe bad breath, a repulsive, fishy odor. And so, the nickname, the foul-breathed predator, was born. American newspapers ran sensational headlines everywhere with titles like, "The rapist with a terrifying breath spreads fear in Massachusetts," "The fetid breath of a wanted criminal," or "The foul-breathed predator, America's nightmare." The Massachusetts police did everything they could to track him down for 2 years, and finally, he was arrested at a hotel in the outskirts of Boston. When taken into custody awaiting trial, Lee displayed an oddly calm demeanor, showing no signs of panic or fear. On June 15, 2007, the trial officially began at Quincy District Court, Massachusetts. Lee entered the courtroom with an eerily composed attitude. In front of him was his victim, the woman he had assaulted that fateful night. She trembled at the sight of the man who had ruined her life but bravely stood to testify. The prosecutor presented undeniable evidence. DNA from the crime scene matched Lee. His fingerprints were found on the door, and security cameras recorded him near the scene that night. There was no escaping the truth. The jury withdrew to deliberate. It took them 2 days to review the evidence before reaching a final verdict. Everyone was awaiting justice, but one man had no intention of waiting: Tuan-Kit Lee. Morning of June 17, 2007. The city was still in anticipation, but elsewhere someone was already preparing to disappear. At 5:30 a.m., Lee left his home in Quincy, carrying a small backpack and a forged passport. He was neither rushing nor panicking, because this was a meticulously planned escape. At 6:15 a.m., a black taxi stopped in front of Logan Airport, Boston. Lee stepped out, pulled his hat low, and tried to avoid attention. Instead of checking in at a regular counter, he headed straight for the private flight terminal. Massachusetts police sensed something was wrong. When the trial began and the defendant was missing, the judge immediately issued an emergency arrest warrant. A special task force was mobilized to hunt down Lee. 8:30 a.m., a checkpoint at Logan Airport received orders to monitor Tuan-Kit Lee. Security personnel checked passenger lists. No one under Lee's name was found. It was highly likely he was using a fake identity. 9 a.m., SWAT teams stormed the private airport terminal. But it was too late. The small plane carrying Lee had already taken off, leaving Boston. Destination: California. Lee had escaped. He officially became one of America's most wanted fugitives. Despite this, the trial proceeded in his absence. And then a historic verdict was reached. Tuan-Kit Lee was officially found guilty. But no one could sentence a man who had vanished. All efforts to capture Lee failed. No one knew where he was. Lee's lawyer later argued that his client fled because he feared returning to prison where he had been assaulted before. A weak excuse. After escaping from Massachusetts in 2007, the FBI never stopped searching for him. Lee's name remained on America's Most Wanted list year after year. His case was updated annually, and his image appeared on America's Most Wanted, but there was no trace of him. The police even offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. In 2023, an anonymous tip changed everything. A reliable source informed the U.S. Marshals Service that Tuan-Kit Lee was alive and hiding in California. Not only that, but he had secretly contacted his family after years of being missing. This information surfaced from Instagram when Lee accidentally posted a public photo of himself online, Perhaps he had grown overconfident in his ability to hide. Investigators later revealed that the phone calls originated from Contra Costa, California. Immediately, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and state police from Massachusetts and California coordinated to track him down. They analyzed traffic cameras, examined suspicious financial transactions, and investigated anyone with ties to Lee. A new name surfaced: a wealthy woman, owner of a chain of flower shops in Contra Costa, living in a multi-million-dollar mansion in Diablo. This woman was found to have connections with a man using a fake identity. Investigators secretly surveilled the mansion and placed hidden cameras along nearby roads. They spotted a man with striking similarities to Twin Kit Lee, though his appearance had changed. He had shaved his head, grown a long beard, and dressed like a successful businessman. By this time, facial recognition technology had advanced significantly. Police extracted images of the man and compared them to Lee's older photos. The match was 98%. There was no longer any doubt. After 17 years on the run, Twin Kit Lee had finally been found. Authorities did not want to alert him, so they decided against storming the mansion. Instead, they waited for the perfect moment to act. They had to capture Lee without giving him another chance to escape. Morning of May 28, 2024. Special forces received intel. Lee and the woman were about to leave the mansion in a black SUV. Unmarked police vehicles surrounded the area. Everything was set for the takedown. 9:30 a.m., the SUV left the Diablo mansion. A group of undercover officers trailed them from a distance, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. 10 a.m., the SUV approached a deserted intersection. At that moment, two police cars suddenly swerved in, blocking the front and rear of the vehicle. A loud siren blared. "FBI, step out of the car immediately." Lee immediately panicked. He never expected that he had been discovered. Armed officers rushed forward, pointing their guns inside. The woman panicked and raised her hands in surrender. But Lee remained calm. He smirked and spoke with confidence. "I am Michael Wong, a businessman from Hong Kong," he said nonchalantly. His fake documents were ready. He had undoubtedly rehearsed for this moment for years. But the police had irrefutable evidence. They demanded his fingerprints. Sweat began to form on Lee's forehead. He knew the game was over. A heavy silence filled the air for a minute. Then he let out a deep sigh, bowed his head, and whispered, "All right, I am Twin Kit Lee." "Twin Kit Lee, you are under arrest for rape, kidnapping, and escaping a sentence." An officer read him his Miranda rights as he was pushed into a police vehicle. After his arrest, the police took his fingerprints. The data was immediately sent to the National Criminal Identification System. Within minutes, the results appeared on the screen. A 100% match with Twin Kit Lee's records. There was no doubt. The fugitive who had evaded capture for 17 years was finally caught. Twin Kit Lee was officially detained at the Northern California Federal Prison. He sat motionless in the interrogation room, his face expressionless. There was no escape this time. An extradition order was immediately issued. U.S. Marshals prepared to transport him back to Massachusetts, where his 2007 conviction still loomed over him. He had been found guilty, but he had never faced the punishment he deserved. This time, justice would not let him slip away again. As the investigation continued, the mystery of his 17-year-long escape began to unfold. After fleeing Massachusetts in 2007, Twin Kit Lee moved to New York. He used fake documents and avoided areas with security cameras. He didn't use credit cards, never made phone calls, and didn't check into hotels. He lived like a ghost, meticulously ensuring that no trace of his presence could lead the police to him. But New York was not his final stop. After a few weeks in hiding, he bought a long-distance bus ticket under a false name and headed straight to San Francisco, California. In 2008, inside a small cafe in San Francisco, Lee met an Asian woman, an entrepreneur who owned a thriving chain of flower shops. She was a successful businesswoman with social status, but lacked a personal life. Lee quickly ingratiated himself, gained her trust, and gradually became a part of her world. There was no marriage certificate, no property in his name. Lee remained invisible in the legal system. He had no official income, didn't file taxes, and left no bank transactions. The police couldn't track him because, on paper, he didn't exist. However, as the years passed, he made one fatal mistake. He carelessly posted a public photo of himself on social media. That small slip-up sealed his fate. When the police informed the woman of the true identity of the man she had lived with for over a decade, she broke down in tears. She couldn't believe it. How could it be? The man she trusted, shared her life with, was one of America's most wanted fugitives? But when police presented the evidence, photographs, case files, and victim testimonies, she could no longer deny the truth. When asked if she had ever suspected anything during their years together, she only shook her head. He always acted normal. There were never any signs. He had deceived the entire world. But more importantly, he had deceived her, the one who had loved and trusted him. She agreed to cooperate with the police, providing details about his life in California. Thanks to her information, investigators were able to piece together his entire journey from his escape in Massachusetts to his eventual capture. June 2024, Tuan-Kit Lee was officially extradited to Massachusetts. The plane carrying him landed at Boston Logan Airport late at night under heavy U.S. Marshals protection. The next morning, the police escorted him to Norfolk County Court, where he had originally been tried in 2007. Sitting in the courtroom was the woman he had victimized in 2005. She was no longer the weak girl of the past. Today, she stood up to expose the man who had once destroyed her life. The prosecution presented the entire case. They reopened old records, displayed DNA evidence, witness testimonies, and investigation reports from the FBI, Massachusetts, and California police. There was no room for denial. Prosecutors not only charged him for the 2005 assault, but also added charges of fleeing justice, using a false identity, and evading capture for 17 years. After everything, it didn't take long for the court to reach its final verdict. For the crimes of assault, kidnapping, escaping justice, and using a false identity, Tuan-Kit Lee was officially sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Tuan-Kit Lee lowered his head, saying nothing. No more smirks, no more defiant stares. For the first time in his life, he had lost control over everything. Immediately after the trial, he was escorted back to a Massachusetts prison. The cell door closed behind him, and this time, it would never open again. The foul-breathed predator would spend the rest of his life behind bars, facing the consequences of his crimes. His story serves as a warning to anyone who thinks they can escape justice. But it is also a powerful message to victims. Speak up. Don't let criminals walk free. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.